Hi, I'm Jannie Ho, and I am an illustrator, writer, and a cartoonist, and you're listening to GuildCast.
GuildCast is a weekly podcast series based on the 3 pillars of the Graphic Artists Guild: advocacy, community, and business resources. Keep listening to learn more about the Graphic Artists Guild and visit our website at www.graphicartistsguild.org.
It was a really interesting conversation that he was talking about Patreon and how Patreon is the way to go these days, and then push things over to Kickstarter. You build your audience on Patreon. Once you have a large enough audience, you move it over to Kickstarter, and you have enough people investing in your book, and you then self-publish your book. And he said that that's like the ideal way, in his opinion, that's the ideal way to get a book out that's meant for an older audience.
Cartoonists Connect, this week on GuildCast Community, as we sit with Guild members Ed Shems and Kandra with their special guest, Jannie Ho, as they talk their experiences as cartoonists in the industry. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of GuildCast. This week is a community episode, and we're sitting with some of the Guild community. We have Ed Shems, who you guys have heard before. We have Kandra, who's also a new member of the Guild, and we also have a special guest, Jannie Ho. Welcome to everyone, and we're just gonna kick it off, and I'm gonna throw it over to Ed.
Oh, thank you so much, Camille. All right, Jannie, Joe, thanks for joining us today. I'm really excited to talk about being a cartoonist, especially during a pandemic, during a quarantine pandemic. So let's talk about, well, first of all, let's talk about where we can see each other's work. So, Joe, can you tell us where we can see your illustration work, where we can see your web work, your webcomic work?
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. My name's Joe. I've been a graphic designer for years, and started off way back in the days when floppy disks were 8 inches wide, and Macs and PCs were toy computers. My portfolio site is joekandra.com. That's JOEKANDRA.com, and I have a lot of corporate stuff there, and some cartoons and some even animations. And I have a web comic called One Small Step, which is osscomic.com. And it's a little bit on hiatus right now since I've been a little bit lazy the past 4 years, unfortunately. I've got to bring it back. That's where you can see my stuff.
Thanks. Jannie, go ahead.
Hey, my name is Jannie Ho. I am an illustrator and a writer. I do mostly children's picture books and board books and novelty books. I also illustrate for kids' products and like stickers and puzzles. And I also love drawing comics. So my website is my name, Jannie Ho, JANNIEHO.com. And I also draw myself as a chicken in comics. So you can find that on Instagram, and it's at Chicken Girl Comics.
Great. And I'm Ed Shems, and you can find me everywhere as at EdFredNed. So my website is edfredned.com. That's my illustration work. And then, so where I work for corporate clients, book publishers. And then I also just started up edfrednedcomics.com. And I'm really excited about it. And I've posted a bunch of comics there. And so I want to talk about what inspires you? Like, why are you creating comics? Whoever wants to talk, go ahead.
I guess I'll start. Well, I grew up in a fully stocked studio at my beck and call. My mom is a fine art watercolor artist, and she was also a teacher for many years. We always had students coming into the house. We didn't have a basement. We had a studio. So I was always drawing for my whole life. We didn't have coloring books. If you wanted to color a picture, you had to draw it first, that kind of thing. And comics, I was drawn to comics. One of the first books I remember reading was the very first Peanuts compilation that my mom had bought when she was in art school in Philadelphia. She was a little upset when I was drawing in it, but that's what I grew up with the comics sheets, the newspaper comics, the Sunday pages. And I was drawn to it because it was something fast. I think I draw comics partly because I'm impatient and I don't want to spend a whole time like doing a watercolor or an oil or things like that. It's something I can do quick. You just need a piece of paper and a pencil and you can draw. And my brother and I would make books and make long form. We would get a huge piece of construction paper and just draw. I had a bird character I drew and he had a gorilla. And it's just something that's always appealed to me.
Jannie, how about you?
I think looking back at my childhood, I've always loved reading comics, or I actually particularly love reading manga, Japanese comics, which I grew up with, and I still love it now. And I'm like a lot older now, and I still love that style. But I think now looking back, when I was a designer, I worked at Nickelodeon magazine actually, and there was a comic section ran by Dave Roman and Chris Duffy. Shout out to them. Mm-hmm. They ran an awesome comic section in Nickelodeon magazine. I really got involved in that and kind of loved comics there. And then for myself personally, when I moved from New York City to Ann Arbor, Michigan, I was kind of having a hard time adjusting to kind of the two different lifestyles. And so I started to draw a comic about it to kind of as a little bit of a therapy. And I drew myself as a chicken because I was known as Chicken Girl at the time. I loved chickens. And it was kind of nice drawing myself as a chicken to kind of like separate myself from like kind of, if I draw myself as a person, it would be too real. But anyway, I drew myself as a chicken and about all the kind of adjustments I had to go through kind of moving from like this one big city to another place I had no friends or family with. And so that really helped me. And that really kind of got me to really loving the form. And also when I moved to Ann Arbor, I was trying to look for people that were kind of illustrators. Like I've always been in children's books. So I was trying to look for children's book illustrators and writers there. But in that community, there was a lot more comic artists. So I started hanging out with them. And then that kind of fueled more about my love of comics. So, and now I feel like the industry has really boomed, especially in kids comics. So it's kind of like a perfect segue for me to do kind of the picture books, but then also be involved with like comics and cartoons and graphic novels.
Totally. And hanging out with other comic people is so much fun. The conversations that you can have. It's amazing. Yeah. And by the way, you mentioned Dave Roman. Folks who are listening, check out yaytime.com. That's his comic site. He does great work and he's written a few books you can check out as well. So I started at the low end. I started, with Garfield, who I don't like as much anymore. But, the Peanuts came in there and the Peanuts were just mind blowing to me. But for a long time, I used to cut out the Garfield strip, the Sunday strip every Sunday. And then eventually, I got really sick of it. And then I noticed on the back of it, luckily in the Sunday Globe, the Boston Globe, they always positioned the cartoons, the comics in the same place. So on the back of it was Spider-Man. And which I read, but I wasn't that into it. But eventually, I no longer looked at the Garfield side. I was looking at the Spider-Man side. And every now and then it just kind of shifted, so I'd lose a little bit. But Flora Deary, who did the Sunday comic, was just a stellar artist. And that really set me off on comic books, the future of superhero comic books. And then eventually, I started volunteering with MICE, the Massachusetts Independent Comics Expo, and I'm the special guest coordinator for them. And I started probably 6 years ago, I think, something like that. And I started being surrounded by independent comics. And I started realizing just how vast the world is of independent comics and how wonderful the work is. And eventually it just kind of led me down this road where I eventually wanted to do my own comics. And that's kind of where I am right now. And I'm still at the beginning of my comic career, my cartoonist career, as is Jannie. And I'm excited to be here with Joe also, because he's done it, taken a hiatus, and he's ready to jump back in it as well. So I think we have a lot to talk about. Joe, tell us how long did One Small Step last before you took a hiatus?
Well, I actually should go back. I used to do a comic strip in my college paper. It was called Dinsdale. And I was a theater major at the University of New Hampshire. And if you wanted to hang with another group of people who are real fun to hang with, besides comics, hang around with theater people. But I really enjoyed it.
Raina, sorry to interrupt, which Raina Tegelmeier really covers in her book Drama, in her graphic novel Drama.
Yes. So I did the strip there. I actually was contacted by a guy who was trying to start up his own comic syndicate at the time and wanted to distribute my comic strip. He actually, sent me pre-drawn panels on paper. And I found out I couldn't draw that big. I was drawing like half size what he had on Bristol board, but obviously that didn't go anywhere because I don't think he was ever able to get it off the ground. But I had always thought about doing newspaper comics. When I was in high school, I got a book by Mort Walker called Backstage at the Strips, and it was a big book all about his life and comics and doing gag comics and doing comic strips. And it just really seemed appealing to me. And I thought, hey, that'd be a good job. You'd only have to come up with one idea a day. It doesn't work out that way. But I did that. I did sample. I did one or two submissions to the syndicates, but nothing ever happened. And I got into doing graphic design and did that way. And then I started One Small Step in 2006 and did that until about 2011 when there were some family issues with the extended families, which kind of prevented me from having the mindset to continue doing kind of a humorous gag-a-day strip. Picked it up a couple of years later, did it for a while longer, and then in 2007 was when I kind of last had got a layoff, and other issues just took away the time and the impulse to do it. But I'm getting back into it. I've been, wanting to get it done. I've been thinking about ideas, trying to sketch down, outlines of what I want the characters to do. And the thing I like about newspaper comics is the worlds that get built around the characters, and you follow these characters for months or years, and it's just so interesting and so rich. Everybody knows who a Charlie Brown is, or a Lucy is, or a Snoopy, because those characters. It's hard to do now, but back when they could enter into the broader knowledge of the culture. It was just seemed so interesting to me. And then even the web comics, which have smaller readership, but you get to know these characters. And so it's always really appealed to me, that aspect of it, and I've kind of missed it. So
GuildCast is a weekly podcast series based on the 3 pillars of the Graphic Artists Guild: advocacy, community, and business resources. Keep listening to learn more about the Graphic Artists Guild and visit our website at www.graphicartistsguild.org.
I love how you refer to or suggest that comic strip is just easy to jump into and easy to get done on a daily basis.
No, it's not. The most I ever did was 3 strips a week, and I could barely do that. Because I was, if you're working full time or something like that, it's a lot of work. Because I've always found the characters, drawing the characters is very easy, but it's like, I got to figure out what camera angle I want to use for that panel, and I have to figure out, what's in the background, and do I want to draw a background, and if I do want to draw a background, how detailed, all that stuff enters into it too.
I got to hang out with Jonathan Lemon, who is the comic strip artist for Alley Oop and Rabbits Against Magic, and all around great guy. I got to hang out with him for like a weekend, and or a little bit longer. And every night before he went to bed, he had to draw a strip. And it takes a lot of discipline to be able to do a daily strip. And I think that's what the syndicates required. But now the barriers of entry are so different. So we can kind of, if we're going to do strips, we can kind of make our own rules and put them out our own ways. And, the difference between Jannie and me and Joe is Joe is kind of aiming more for a strip, and Jannie and I are aiming more for like the comic book form of cartooning.
Well, there's all the different types of formats that you can do now. It's unlimited, unlimited canvas. And you have to, I have trouble breaking out of the 4 or 5 panel motif. It's like I think, I could do so much more, but I have to get into that mindset to break out of that form.
You were commenting
Jannie,
to me.
I was looking at Jannie's ABC comics on her site, and it's like, those are great. And I can't figure out how to get what I want to do into different formats. That's a problem I have to work on myself.
That's right. Jannie, how did you figure that one out? Like, how did you work out what shape format?
Oh, I mean, it's funny because I just wanted to post on Instagram, right? So it was just the square format was because of Instagram. And I just wanted to kind of fit everything in, all my ideas in one panel, right? I just went short burst. It feels like the beat of the, like, just maybe like 3 to 5 panels, 3 to 6 panels is like my sweet spot of whatever I want to say and convey, like that quickness. And also just the format of like A, B, C, D kind of puts my mind in like, this is what I have to do today. Kind of set some parameters, which is really nice, like self-imposed and parameters. But I have to give it to Joe, like just doing it almost every day for years on end. I mean, for me to do just the alphabet was quite a feat. I mean, I was trying to do it for a while. So I was trying to doing it one letter a week. And that was just draining in my energy. Like all week I was thinking about it. It's a lot of mental work too. So you get exhausted.
The amount of comics I put out in those years was less than a professional doing it every day. So in the newspaper. So, it's
lots of,
it can be easy. It can be hard.
Right. Like if you're in the flow, it's great. It's great. But then if something, like you were saying, like life happens, something happens with your family or just whatever life throws at you, then it just kind of shifts your mental focus a little bit and then you're off. So it's quite hard.
Right.
It's an art form. It's like any art form that happens.
So Jannie, how do you create your comics? Like what materials do you use?
Right now, the Chicken Girl comics, it's all Procreate. So I have to admit that was really quite the program that kind of shot me through, and it was just easy to do. I think when I was in Ann Arbor and doing it, the same kind of chicken, like I drew myself as a chicken, I was drawing it just pen and ink on, just whatever micron or brush pen I had. But now it's just all Procreate. It's just super easy to set up. And I have my brush that I like, and it's easy for me to upload onto IG. So
do you sketch out your ideas on paper before, or do you just open up Procreate, get the right size artboard, sketch it out there, and then draw over that?
No, I literally just open it up, open a square. I don't write anything. I just start. I have some ideas already, especially the alphabet. I kind of already know what I want to do, but I'm just drawing the panels and then editing it again and erasing it. If it doesn't work, I'll just draw it again or put it on a different layer. So that's it. I just start with just sketching. So I find it very hard to just type down anything, especially something that's that quick, right? Like 3 to 5 panels.
Right. Your husband and your daughter feature prominently in your cartoons. Do you have to get approval from them?
My daughter.
do you get pushback after the fact?
My daughter teases me because she's like, I don't want to be drawn this way. But right now it's, she doesn't get a say. But my husband, it's funny. He seems okay with it. It's funny because I drew something about banana bread, like about the bananas getting eaten before I get a chance to take.
I remember that one.
Banana, and now he is very conscious about leaving me 3 bananas for me to make banana bread. Like, he won't eat the bananas anymore. Once he sees there's only 3 left. So it's kind of like this weird, probably passive-aggressive way of letting him know. And it's on the internet, so, social media. I don't do anything beforehand. I don't. So if anything,
in my house, nobody eats the banana, so banana bread gets made all the time.
Oh, really? I don't have a problem.
I did a cartoon. I did a multi-page comic that's on my site called something like "Totally Embarrassing Things," and it's all about my brother, how he made me, when we were little kids, how he made me sniff some pepper. And for the rest of my life, I can't eat pepper. Like, I sniffed so much of it, and that it just kind of got into me. And it really, like, I played it up a little bit in my comic, but it really did mess me up. Like, when I would go out to dinner, I'd have to be really careful that they wouldn't put, like, cracked peppercorn on my salad or on my fish or whatever it is. And so I had him kind of approve it before I pushed it out, and he was fine with it, but he was like, I don't remember doing that to you at all. And so he believed me, he wasn't contesting that. But it's really interesting because he's been so nice to me ever since.
Oh, really?
He feels really badly. And, all the things that he did to me, because it was a little more like, I talked about how he, it's the story is called Take a Whiff. And I talk a little bit more about how, like, I looked up to him because he was 2 years older. And so this, and then the story was really about the pepper. And for my last birthday, which was this past December, he came by and brought me an entire brisket. he had smoked a brisket for me for my birthday. And I think it's because he feels really badly, which I'll take, because he makes really good brisket.
I was going to ask if it was an older brother, because that sounds like an older brother thing.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I'm an older brother, so.
Oh. Then you owe your siblings a brisket at least.
No, I was the third parent. I didn't abuse them as much, so I just enforced rules. So,
what resources do you guys tap into when you're thinking about a comic, creating your comic, clothing your characters? Do you go online and look at anything? Do you go, oh, I wonder how so-and-so would draw this situation, just to kind of, I don't know, inform your perspective?
For me, things kind of pop into my head, like fully formed. Mm-hmm. And then it's a process of trying to actually produce what I see in my head. And then that's where the research gets in. So it's like, okay, how do I draw that pose? How does that thing work? I was recently doing a bunch of political cartoons for a website, who actually found me on the Graphic Artists Guild portfolio site. And
that's members only. Members only get on that portfolio site right there.
Yes.
I've gotten jobs from there as well.
And what I would do is I have an iMac an old iMac that's starting to die on me, but I can take a picture of myself in the pose I want. So, or I find the pose online, or it was more things like I just drew something for a local theater doing a production of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So I had to draw Zaphod Beeblebrox with his 2 heads and 3 arms. So I took 2 pictures of myself in the 2 half poses and then kind of stitched it roughly together in Photoshop and used that as a guide. So I most of my research is just trying to figure out folds in clothes and things like that.
Right.
Or how does the hand look when I'm drawing it in that perspective, and I need to get that so I can trace around it and then make it look more like my stuff. So
I once had my son pose in my office holding, a stick, so I could figure out what someone would look like holding a lightsaber at a certain angle. And I still have the photo, it's from 7 years ago, of him just standing there holding a stick ready to slice someone in half.
Well, that's something that people who are experienced or just getting started need to know is like everybody uses references. Everybody uses photo references. I mean, look at anything about Norman Rockwell online and you'll look at it. You can see here are the 5 photo references that he used, and here's the finished picture. And it's like, you don't need to be able to draw everything out of your head. It's good to have the idea, but then you use references, any references you need to.
Jannie, how about you?
Yeah, for me, I think with comics, which is different a little bit from my illustration work, is that sometimes it's a lot more about inking, a lot of black and white, which frankly, to be honest, I'm not very good with black and white illustrations, which I really want to get good at. So when I do see something that I like, usually on Instagram or just like some graphic novel I'm reading, I'm like, this looks amazing. Or the color combinations, maybe it's a limited color palette. I'm a big color palette saver. I guess when I see some like a good color combination, maybe like 2 to 3 colors, and I'm like, oh wow, this works, I'll just save it for future reference. But usually for me, it's about the black and white work that I'm trying to like figure out for myself. So that more of that in that sense.
Right. I have like a huge collection of independent graphic novels and superhero comics, but we don't need to talk about that right now. And I love going into them when I'm working on my own project and just kind of flipping through just to get a feel for like the fluidity of how other people draw their characters. Because sometimes I'll draw a really stiff character and I'm like, I know I can do better. And I'll just kind of flip through to just get some inspiration. Or I'll even do a Google search of, I just did one yesterday of a girl reaching into her closet or something like that. I don't know. Just to, where's that second arm? I got the first arm, no problem. But what should that second arm be doing? And I tend to draw, when I'm drawing something like that, I tend to draw totally profile. And then when I look at what someone actually looks like, they're a little more 3/4. I mean, granted, that's the photographer's choice often. But it just kind of keeps me on my game to just always improve. When I look at my art from, 10 years ago, it is completely different from my art now. I was happy 10 years ago. And now when I look back, I'm no longer happy with how that work turned out. And I want to keep growing, and I want to keep changing, and I want it to look a certain way. So in order for me to do that, we have to, look at what other people are doing. And, for that reason, I love my Instagram feed because I have a lot, mostly artists on that. And there are a lot of comic artists on it, a lot of painters, and, the painters I love to watch because of the colors that they throw in that I would never think of doing. I'm enamored with people who can put in these random colors in faces and it doesn't look weird, like green and orange on a face. It's beautiful. I think they're the bravest people in the world, more than someone who's climbing Mount Everest. So just watching what other people are doing and striving for, if that's what you want to do. But for me, it is striving to always do better and not just, fall back on what I already know. Let's do some poses that I don't know yet. And I'm still scared about those sky views, bird's eye views. I'm not ready for those yet. Right.
Yeah.
The newest edition of Pricing and Ethical Guidelines by the Graphic Artists Guild is here. Published by MIT Press, get your copy on Amazon or at graphicartistsguild.org.
Because it's so easy to fall into just a library of pre-posed things, and then it's like color forms, and you're just kind of slapping it together.
Right, and
if you don't experiment.
And yesterday, you and I talked about, in preparation for this, Joe and I talked a little bit about, Joe brought this up. Wally Wood, many years ago, he's a comic artist, a very, I'll just say very good comic artist. He created 22 panels. It was actually originally 24, but I think 2 of the panels were too hard to, got lost or were too hard to copy, to replicate, because they were too light. So 22 panels that always work. And they're all just these different angles. I have
it's great. It's like long shot. It's very cinematic. It's almost like, it's almost like, how do you shoot a scene? It's like, okay, there's over the shoulder, and then there's extreme close up, and there's medium shot, and then there's wide shot, and then there's silhouette, and then there's highlight and big head, and a lot of things. I found that years ago, and I actually printed it out on a nice big tabloid size printer I had available at work, so I could have it. And I definitely do not look at it enough.
Yeah, we highly recommend that you look it up. Just type in Wally Wood 22 panels, and it'll come up 100 different times. And I think you can actually buy a print somewhere. I was trying to find out. I didn't quite find.
There's an official print I was reading about. One that's official.
I believe so. Yes, there is. Wally Wood's estate has put out an official print. Well, at least I'm reading an article at the 2012 Comic-Con in San Diego. They put out a print, so I'm not sure if it's still in print. And then artist Rafael Kainan, he put together a revisited version using all Wally Wood's art. Where in real books, he took panels that Wally Wood used, that showed Wally Wood using those 22 different angles. Anyway, it's really great. And then we'll in the notes to this podcast, maybe we'll put this link in, because Cheese Hasselberger also created 22 panels that never work, and they're pretty fun.
Never seen that one. I'll look that up.
Yeah, it's fun. So how do you guys stay creative? How do you especially we can't go out right now, and who knows, maybe once this podcast comes out, we'll be a little more free, but I think we'll still have some confinement. So how do you guys stay creative if you can't go out and have new amazing experiences and face-to-face talk to people?
That's assuming we're having amazing experiences.
I don't know. Lately, for the past couple of weeks, I've been very creative because I'm taking a class, which is perfect because it's called Kids Comic Unite. And it's been really wonderful. It's run by Jana Morishima, and she is an agent for graphic novels. She is a co-founder of Graphics Imprint, Scholastic. And this is her kind of new venture. It's somewhat new, and I'm taking the intensive class, and it's been I'm really inspired. So sometimes when you sign up for a class, you don't know what you're going to get. You might be overwhelmed. You might be, maybe this is not for me. But right now I'm taking this class and I am feeling really, really inspired. I also kind of changed my work schedule a little bit, where I'm committing the first hour of each day to just doing writing or personal work or my comic stuff, and before I do my client work, which is just finally, after I don't know how many years I've been in this industry, finally every single day I get to do something that's not for somebody else, it's for me. Because before I was joining groups, but I never had any work to show, was because I was just putting it off the end of the day. And so I think that for me right now, doing the thing, committing myself like just 1 hour in the morning for whatever creative stuff I want to do personally has really been really great. So that's.
Do you stay up late? Do you stay up late and do work as well?
No,
like do your own personal work?
I used to be a night owl, but now by the end of the day, I'm really, really tired. So I realized I had to switch kind of where my energy is. Like if my energy is really good in the morning, then I need to do all the personal creative stuff in the morning. But at night, now that I kind of have some ideas going in the morning that I want to finish up. So at night, I sometimes will think about it a little bit more and just kind of type up some things I want to write about or manuscript I'm working on. So it's slowly but surely kind of switching my mindset a little bit. So, but at night, I'm usually pretty tired. I just want to watch some TV shows, which is okay, okay, I did it. I did what I wanted to do in the morning. Because 1 hour in the morning is equal to like many hours at night when I'm trying to like slog through something. So it's been working for me right now. We'll see how it goes. Like, a month from now, maybe this is all.
It's whatever works for you at the time.
That's right. Yeah. So, yeah. So, what about you guys?
I don't have like a regular schedule, which has always been a big problem. Because I could use a regular schedule. My workload is really low right now. I was spent a long time looking for another full-time position, and now have just decided that's not going to happen, and am looking to go over work more towards the freelance. Doing a lot of corporate design work and things like that, which I've done for the majority of my career, and a lot of that has dried up over the past year because of the pandemic. Seems to be coming back a little bit. So, doing the political cartoons for the last year was pretty good because it's a site. Actually, it's going away because they decided they just can't get the funding for their site anymore. But we're looking at other avenues to put some of the cartoons in. They would come up with ideas, and I would work up the ideas into kind of condense them, because there were a couple progressive professors from Boston, and they think as professors, and they would send paragraphs of information, and I have to distill it down just like 1 or 2 sentences, because a cartoon, especially a political cartoon, you have to distill down to its core essence so that it can be grasped in a real quick read. So that gave me some structure, and I've been refurbishing my kitchen a lot. But when I was doing One Small Step, or whenever I've been trying to do creative stuff, I always found, as you were saying, Jannie, that the mornings are best. You'd get up, and I'd get in the shower, and I'd have these fantastic ideas. I could do a whole week's worth of strips, or a whole page full of something else, and I would desperately try to remember it after I toweled off, and write notes and sketch and sketch little things like that. I always found mornings much more creative. When I was doing One Small Step on a 3-day-a-week thing, that's when I would get the ideas, but I wouldn't have time to actually sit down and draw it until the evenings. But if you get the ideas, then that's the most important thing I found, was getting the ideas, getting that crystallized, at least getting that in outline form, so that you can then expand upon it and massage it and work it later.
Well, that's the most stressful part, get that part.
That's done. The hardest part. So writer. I'm so glad you said you were a writer, Jannie, because if you're going to do any kind of long form comic strip, comic book, manga, or whatever, you also have to be a writer. And yes. I always found that that's the hardest part. When I'm doing the political cartoons, that was the hardest part. It would take us a week to come to a consensus about what the cartoon was going to be about, and then I would do it in a day. So that's always the hardest part.
And Joe, how do you work? Do you work on paper, or do you work digitally?
Well, when I initially started One Small Step, that was Bristol board. I have my wife's wedding gift to me was a drawing table. And so I set that up down in the basement and put my computer next to it, and I had a scanner, and I would sketch it out in blue pencil, and then do a second sketch on top of the blue pencil with really, really hard, like a 4H pencil, just very light, and then I would ink it. And I would scan it, and I did it very light in the non-repro blue so I wouldn't have to erase because it was just a pain. And then I'd have to scan it into 2 pieces and stitch it back together and then finish it up in Photoshop with whatever gradients or cleanup or text I had to put in. I was actually able to create a text of my handwriting so I didn't have to hand letter everything. And but now I don't have room for the drawing table, so I do everything digitally. And I've been using Clip Studio Pro, Clip Studio Paint, the EX version for actually several years, and I found that pretty good. I miss the spontaneity of the paint of the paper because I feel when I'm drawing on paper I draw better. And I still have to think about it more when I'm doing it originally digitally. But I'm hoping to get some sort of Cintiq or some sort of. I have an old Wacom tablet I used, and so I'd like to try to get some sort of drawing monitor, drawing tablet where I can actually draw and have it appear underneath the pen, and I think that would help that a lot. I do miss the pen and ink though. I just don't have a place to do it now.
Right. I love the iPad and Procreate though.
Yeah. My iPad's so old. My iPad's so old. It's my dad's old one, and it doesn't use the Apple Pencil. It's just too old, so.
Yeah, you have to get the latest one.
My desktop computer had a defective hard drive suddenly right before the warranty was up. So I was without a computer for 2 weeks. So I went out and I bought an iPad. And during that time, I guess Illustrator for iPad came out in like November or something, or October of 2020. And this was January. This was like January 3rd or something. And so for the next 2 weeks, I could only draw on that. And I created a comic using Illustrator for the iPad. And it was so liberating to sit on my sofa and draw, because my office is like the third floor and my kids are always running around on the first floor, and I feel guilty if if it's the weekend or if they're just doing their own thing, I feel guilty being that far away. So it was really nice to sit on the sofa and be able to draw, or watch a TV show with my wife at night and be able to draw a comic. It was really, and the Illustrator app, excuse me, it works really well, actually. I was really happy with it.
Do you not need the shortcuts, though? What about, do you use shortcuts?
There's this really cool, like, circle on it that you hold down if you want to, which equals shift. And then there are, and I got the iPad with a keyboard, so I'm still able to do, Command G for grouping, or you just click on the group and all the things pop up. It's actually, I was surprised how intuitive it was and how easily I could jump into it. There were some differences, like the brush tool is only the blob brush. Is that the right word? Blob brush. So that if, let's say, you color in, it all becomes one mass shape and it's no longer a vector line. Mm-hmm. So you're not drawing in vector lines, you're drawing in vector shapes. But I'm all about vector. Yeah, then the coloring in was fun because I like to leave little spaces open when I draw on that, so that the color doesn't show through, doesn't become really flat. Drew Wang, when he was doing, what's the name of that? The creepy case files of Margot Malou. He said that he colored in Photoshop, but he purposely didn't do full coverage because he wanted it to have more of a hand feel. So I was channeling him a little bit when I was coloring in. That's my little tomato comic on my website. I know, I keep pushing my website.
I've seen neat things to do in Illustrator, and then I try to replicate it on the desktop, and it's like, oh, that's for the iPad version. Oh, darn.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's some of the drawing things. Some of the I don't remember exactly what they are, but they were like, ways to manipulate shapes that only appear on the iPad version.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Coming up on this episode of GuildCast.
It was a really interesting conversation that he was talking about Patreon and how Patreon is the way to go these days, and then push things over to Kickstarter. You build your audience on Patreon. Once you have a large enough audience, you move it over to Kickstarter, and you have enough people investing in your book, and you then self-publish your book. And he said that that's like the ideal way, in his opinion, that's the ideal way to get a book out that's meant for an older audience. He still felt like the younger work would be best suited through a publisher.
Join the Graphic Artists Guild to listen to the full version of this episode at www.graphicartistsguild.org. Thanks for listening to GuildCast. Coming up in next week's episode.
And how I got started, my friends and family gave me business to do, projects to help them with. So my friends and family really got me started as a freelancer. So a question is, should you discount friends and family? And my answer is, you can, but I let them know ahead of time that I'm going to treat them just like I do any other client. I have them sign service agreements. I invoice them. I treat them just like anybody else. I have a friend who's also a client, and if we have to have a business dinner, we'll spend 5 minutes talking about business, and we're like, okay, time's up. Let's have fun now.
GuildCast is a weekly podcast series based on the 3 pillars of the Graphic Artists Guild: advocacy, community, and business resources. Keep listening to learn more about the Graphic Artists Guild and visit our website at www.graphicartistsguild.org.